joined us from far and near. Those who have joined us from far and near, we are very honored with your presence. And today's topic is going to be interesting. It's a leap to the future. Now, lots of things are happening around us. Now, what is this leap to the future? It's about using human capital to drive digital transformation. This is the topic today, and I think this is of interest to a lot of people around the world, as a lot of things are changing around us, and we need to be a lot more faster in adapting to this change. Now, today with us, we have a very good friend of mine, somebody whom I was honored to work with, somebody who has this amazing character, and over and above that, Anthony Raja Devadoss is the Managing Director and Business Head of Persol Consulting. Now, Anthony has some 20 over years of experience in HR consulting, business services, leadership development, and technology. He's also the Deputy Chairman of Outsourcing Malaysia. So for those who are thinking of outsourcing in Malaysia, you know who to look for. Well, he's gone through the entire HR gambit, and he will be this person who can actually tell us to marry human resource and technology. And we are very honored to have you on board. Over to you, Anthony, without taking much of your show away.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to Alex and Mr. Rajiv and WC Malaysia and WC Worldwide for inviting me to share with you. It's interesting. I think Joe and I have worked together before, so there's a small world there in the human capital side, as well as how do we look at digitization, digitalization, and the complexities around transformation, right? I'm sure all of us agree in the last 14 months, if we were not actively online for whatsoever reason, or we limited it, today we had no choice. We have accelerated that. It's probably 300 times the speed in the last 14 months we have moved into. So in that context, how many of those organizations, if you're a startup, if you're a small and medium enterprise, if you're a mid-size or a large organization, how do you maneuver and move and overcome this transformation challenges that you go through, right? And that's the objective of today's session. So I'm hoping in the next 20 to 30 minutes, I'll keep it short, and I know it's a Sunday night, so to keep it as tight as possible. So of course, all of us are familiar with all the revolutions that's going on, from the initial motorization to production to mass assembly to computerization to cyber. I'm also going to talk to you about the fifth element in a short while. And all of this have pretty much moved from the wheel to the production, automation, etc. And what's happening right now is transformation is also in the same journey. Each of the cycle continues to change, continues to move. And what we are now calling Industry 4.0 is probably coming to the end of that journey. But different countries and different companies are in different stages of it. Some have moved ahead, some are still ahead, some are starting. Now, depending on where their adoption rates are, they have progressed. But let's just think for a moment where we are at, right? Of course, there's a lot of excitement in the last year or so, given the challenges that is brought upon by the pandemic, how companies have tried to stay alive, stay in a way thriving itself as well. Some have pivoted and moved fast ahead, like, of course, one of the platforms we are on, Zoom, is one of those examples. We didn't know much about it at least 2 years before, I would say, safely. Of course, for those who are using global networks and connections, you may probably be aware. There was another one which came in. We never even knew it was there. It was called Microsoft Teams. In the last 12 months, suddenly they became very famous. And likewise, of course, The ones which we knew are probably Cisco, WebEx, and others, right? All right, so kind of give that perspective. I like you to look at the blue line in your bar charts there. If you look at the level of confidence in how future correlates in terms of progressing the Industry 4.0 side, our region is one of the lowest, which is Asia Pacific. And if you look at those who felt that this is a time to change, again, we are one of the lowest. Focus on disruption, also one of the lowest. However, if you look at the intention to keep a close eye on reducing costs, we were one of the best. And I'm sure we are continuing to be there. And in terms of autonomous technologies, we are also ahead. And augmenting human technology as well, we are on par. So just this gives you a relative factor of where we are at in terms of the transformation and how leaders in companies or businesses, and I'm considering equally as well as government. If we take government, business owners, and corporates, how are they looking at? And this is a combination of that pool of people who have given remarks or statistics on this transformation, digital transformation that is taking place. Now, I told you, I promised you that I'll talk to you a little bit about the 5.0. And of course, Industry 4.0 is something everybody is talking to. But 5.0 particularly originated from Japan, right? And the idea is, of course, from a traditional society, hunting, farming, industrial information, and human technologies, right? Humanizing technologies is where now we are heading to. It's almost like a square, like a cycle, sorry. We're completing the cycle now. We're coming into the Society 5.0. The term society is about everything that you have from industry to information, and progressively you're connecting back to the society, without whom the entire 5.0 may not be realized. And of course, we are probably shouting at the top of our voice on machine language, AIs, big data, IoT, or 5G, I think now, or even 6G in some cases. We are still talking about it when we are only at 3G or 2.5G, right? So, and this also means that if you do not have access to broadband, some of these cannot materialize. And at the same time, while we are speaking about this, we are also talking about space and orbit internet, right? More and more companies are considering satellite-based internet services as well. Right, so of course, these are a big picture view, right? So if you're going to go into a little bit more details, what do we need to do and how we need to understand? How do we look at it? Yeah. So if you visualize this, what is that shift, mega shift that is taking place, right? Between 4.0 to 5.0. And at 4.0, I think you're talking about how do you interact with the cloud to be able to navigate, to be able to analyze information, and to be able to automate things using human intervention, right? Now, at all times, physical space, digital space is connected, right? There's no direct interface apart from the cloud that we're working on, right? If you're doing I think Waze is quite famous, right? Everybody's doing a search when you're connecting, you're moving to a location to another location, and you're able to physically see it, physically search, physically see. And it also gives you intelligence on the dimensions on which pathway, which alternate route you can take to head to the destination. Analyzing information which is available online. Cybersecurity has become a big challenge, right? A huge amount of information now needs to be validated. If you're a company, banks want to validate your information. If you are a client, as a company, you want to validate the information. If you are an employee who's seeking an employment, we want to validate, the employer wants to validate your information, right? So where do you go to? How do you analyze this information that is available out there, right? And there's many technologies and tools. Some are expensive, some are lesser. And how do you ensure that that becomes something part and parcel of what you're doing? Now, if you look at towards your right as you shift towards the 5.0, while the physical and digital space is there, the shift between the cloud becoming more analytical applying application of the machine language, utilization of the big data, and how do you ensure that you are able to make that automation in everything that you do. What you use to manually navigate becomes autonomous, right? What you use to have a person to help you analyze becomes a proposal from an AI, machine language response to you, right? Now, I'm sure all of you are probably having at least two devices with you, and you know that device can track us, like we can, wherever we are, even if it is switched off, right? Now, at the same time, if you look at how telcos operate, they also kind of navigate and see what and where and how you have in terms of information that you're searching, you're looking for, and they are trying to utilize that information back to ensure that they're able to work with you and identify what makes it a better experience for customer engagement, customer experience, they call it. So that's where I think big data and AI is now helping it position itself. And of course, we are now moving into bots. I think most organizations, especially banks and telcos, the large volume hiring or process-driven organizations have moved into either chatbots, voice bots, and digital bots, which can help automate some of these in view or in lieu of a human being. So we are just looking at this big picture still and seeing how we can break it down into smaller parts. Now, at the same time, let's just take a moment to look at how companies are making that change, right? Investments, I'm talking in the last 5 years probably, investments in AI has grown rapidly. It's across the board, tech giants, startups, everyone are looking at significant investments in the space. And particularly in the areas, right? The areas that they're focusing on, the 4 particular areas. And I'm sure it is reflecting a slight change now with the pandemic. What influences the sales process, operations, customer engagement, and insights, research, information, and data. This is where most organizations are taking their R&D monies and putting it in so that they can get the returns in how they want to make sure that they're able to retain a customer, engage a customer, grow the customer, etc. Right? Now, if you look at, let's take a few minutes into how companies are looking into it, and I'm sure you're familiar. The highest adoption is now in tech and telco, and earlier we were talking about it, automotives and financial services. This is where biggest investments are taking place. The adoption as well, equally. The second group is
Yes, well, I also got one for me.
Retail, media, and consumer product groups are the second or the medium level that is picking up. And of course, the latest to come on board will be the education, healthcare, and travel and tourism sectors. Right? So if you look at how these are bridging, converging, there's a couple of characteristics that we are looking into, those who are adopting. Those who are looking into the maturity, larger businesses generally tend to move in the space faster. Again, I'm not generalizing it, but that's where the adoption is taking place. When you are having multiple technologies in place, I think AI kind of bridges everything faster rather than the integration and customizations. Of course, you need to have the mandate from the board as well as the C-level, C-suite, to get this done, because it goes into another realm for them, right? Of course, growth levers versus savings. And finally, of course, you're talking about looking at the core areas, right? Some core areas in terms of how this is happening and how this can be done. Now, the reason I've put it next to each other is for you to look at what are the companies or the industries that you may be part of that you're seeing this between the high, medium, and the low, versus on the other end, what are those which are in the early adoption stage and what's happening with them, and why are they making that move as well, right? So if you can marry both, you'll be able to see what's happening in terms of the application of the AI that's going on. Right, so a perspective to see how this is moving into businesses and consumers. So consumers, of course, depending on the information they're receiving and where they're receiving from, are tending to look at it as it's going to help me solve some of the challenges that I'm having. And if you're having it adopted into, if you're a government and if you're automating things, you're going to simplify things for the citizens, advanced citizenship, right? Yeah, today I can book my vaccination online. I know where to go. Of course, it's not that absolutely easy, but at least I know what I need to be doing, right? And I can tell you what's the current rate of acceptance that's happening, and what's the rate of response, impact due to it, etc. Now, if you look at the business leaders, when they look at it, they are talking purely from a business advantage, right? What is it that can I do it faster, better, and cheaper? Right? Of course, and of course, insights help them make that decision. And on the other hand, if you look at productivity, I think that's probably a more measurable aspect, right? So that's key, and they're able to use that to enhance them.
Pumpkin seed use.
All right, and the other part is, of course, how they can leverage AI. Is there a background? Okay. So how it can help human and machines put together and move forward in that space. Okay. Now, from a worker perspective or employee perspective, of course, we need to balance this off. From an organization perspective, employee perspective, how they're looking at. Of course, more and more are beginning to accept that it's not causing displacement or impact to employment. I'll come to that in a short while. Of course, there's a big story around it. But if it's going to make the workload more effectively utilizing the time of the individual, then it becomes a plus. Taking away the so-called menial or mundane tasks and allowing the individual to move up in terms of more business-oriented and strategic activities. So newer work opportunities that can come into play. And at the same time, also looking at some form of predictability. So predictive analytics is kind of taking shape with companies of this nature, and they're able to make that decision strategically from a company perspective, and of course, how an individual who's working in a company is able to see this as well, right? Of course, I'm sure all of us are contemplating what's going to happen in the next 5 years. What's going to happen is this question is almost all the time coming up, is are the bots going to replace the people, right? So if you look at what has happened 5 years till now, and at the same time what you're looking at probably in the last 1 year or so, you would notice that while the percentage here indicates what can be changed, I think it's quite true. It's getting there. Of course, the doctors are the least in terms of being impacted, but now it's a bit too late to start studying your medical and becoming a doctor, right? Well, the other option is to own hospitals, right? But at the same time, if you look at all others, and if you look at, and I like you to recall when I started off the different revolution, right? Industrial revolution, digital revolution, economic, and so on, agricultural revolution, etc. So all of those on top, on the back of one of those revolutions, agriculture to industrial, there's been always displacement happening. So the roles are tending to move away or drop or get replaced, and new roles are being created. Jobs, on the other hand, do get paralyzed in some parts or many parts, but at the same time, the new roles should supersede and take over and help people move forward. So which means with each of this revolution, like what we are going through now between the 4 and the 5, Industry 4.0 and 5, there is that shift taking place, but it's kind of tied to the hip in a way, because the digital is in a way connected to the society 5.0. You can't get one over the other. So some of these roles, while they're getting displaced, new roles are being created, right? New roles in the space of artificial intelligence, new roles in the space of cybersecurity, new roles in the space of big data, new roles in the space of cloud, new roles. All of these are coming up. So all of these, and I will talk in a moment on that as well. So if you're talking about type of occupations, how much of automation activities that it has that can get displaced is what we are going to do. But one thing for sure is more than 500,000 jobs will be created, the new ones, right? The new ones that's coming. Now, this is probably going to double. That's what we are projecting, while this data is probably 2018, 2019 data. But again, on the back of some of these activities, it's still, the foundation still remains strong. But wherever we see automatable activities, we are going to see those roles are being impacted the fastest. So new roles in that space coming in, and of course the jobs around that space is going to get impacted, right? Now, on top of all of that, AI is creating the new roles as we are speaking, and the general feedback is acceptable feedback. Across the level of the organization, the new roles are being generated as well in every function, every level of the function, at the point of entry to mid to senior to the top level. All the way, adoption of digital technology is something becomes an essential that everyone needs to keep in mind. So if you are not at it yet, it's now a time for you to make sure you are adding on to your credentials. It brings credence to you. So add a digital program, any one of those digital aspects which I just shared with you, you can go. I think they call it the ABCD. I think you know what it means. Artificial intelligence, big data, cloud, and digitization spaces and so on, right? So all of that space can help you make sure that you're able to get that. So it's about that upskilling and reskilling that you need to consider. And of course, neo-skilling, they call it self-skilling. You yourself find a way, you own your development, and you yourself add to your skills what you need to do. And you don't need to wait for a business to tell you, or a company to tell you, or an industry to tell you. That's why it's called neo-skilling. It's kind of renewing your credentials that you're having, that you might have had probably formally many years ago, that you're now making it informally through what we call as micro credentials. So that's going to help you make sure that you're able to get that. Right. So now, how does this really look like in every organization, right? Whatever I spoke just now, all of that aspects. How does it, when you walk into an organization, what does it mean? So here, I'm just going to quickly talk through 4 areas. One is Amazon. So Amazon is, of course, into a lot of robotics and automation. And if you see the gentleman up just packaging there for Prime right now, he's wearing a wristband and he's able to move devices and stuffs in the right place. It's not about moving it in and out because the robots do that, the bots do that. But I think it's for him to validate them. So how does he ergonomically does that without hurting himself or without doing corrections? And if there is a movement error, there's a vibration sent into his wrist, like Fitbit, right? He's wearing a Fitbit device, and the wrist device, it picks it up and then sends a message to him that it's not appropriate. So imagine if you are in one part of the world. I visited the prefecture, Kawasaki prefecture in Japan, where they have the Amazon automation unit, entire plant, fully automated. You would want to walk into a plant and you would see some people, but here you wouldn't see anyone. In one particular flow, you can probably see one person, 2 at most, right? So that's the kind of automation that they've brought it into, and how that transformation has helped a company which doesn't own anything, but owns the supply chain, right? Connects everything, automates, and make sure they deliver on time for everything. The next one is humanize. You see a gentleman up there wearing a tag, a white tag. So there's a digital chip on it, which actually tracks every movement you do in your office, from room, from floors. And it designs the best office design and most effective office design that you can have. And this is particularly because you are moving into a new post-pandemic work environment where lesser office space, more work from home, right? So how do you ensure that you make it more effective for everyone that comes in? So that study is done by Humanize. Right? The next one is Slack. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Slack. It's basically, it captures the knowledge within an organization. So I recall, I think think it was Mr. Narayan Murthy who said that his biggest concern is when somebody at the end of the day walks away from his office and whether he's going to turn up the next day, right? So there's a lot of knowledge being carried by individuals. So that knowledge or exchange of information or sharing or transfer responsibility, right? That knowledge is being captured via Slack, where even if someone decides to move on, all of the information still remains intact within the organization's system. Yeah. Last but not the least is Cognito. Cognito is basically an application that evaluates the emotional stress and tone in your voice and your customer's voice when you take a call. So, and this is particularly to evaluate whether you had the satisfaction of responding effectively and the recipient or the customer was very happy to get a proper solution from you, and also adding that EQ element to it. So imagine a digital system using an EQ AI to evaluate whether you're able to respond effectively. And this is now being used by telcos to assess the customer service experts who are responding to solutions. And at the same time, are they able to ensure that they're able to respond to the individuals who have called for it, right? So this is, of course, the perspectives around it from a business side and a personal side. Professional side is efficiency, team effort, teamwork together, effectiveness as well, feedback mechanism, and as well as enhancing your skills. So all of these are from a business aspect, how the digital transformation is taking place at the workplace, right? Right, so coming to the conclusion now in terms of how you're putting, of course, we have started this transformation and it's likely unstoppable right now. It's a pace at which the pandemic as well as accelerated that. So the smart technology needs to be put to work effectively for companies to make the right decision and for individuals who are using it. For that to happen, I think from a leadership angle, the choice of the tools and the technology and the investments needs to be done. At all times, it's about upskilling and reskilling. So you're building capability, right? And that capability, as much as I would say is owned by the individual, I think today it's also going to be, from a guidance perspective, the organizations or the businesses need to work with individuals to help them kind of meet each other's needs in a way, right? At least it shouldn't be in a crossroad, rather than they're able to work together like a rail track. It's more on a parallel basis. They're working hand in hand. Throughout the process, of course, maintaining the right culture, because the change, acceptance to change and adoption must come into play for that digital transformation to work. I'm sure you know a lot of horror stories and expensive investments that has gone failed, as in where the people strategy or the culture has not been accepted. So I think ensuring that you are enlisting the cooperation of the management, the leadership, and the operational team is going to be imperative for you to ensure that your transformation takes effect. Now, at the same time, if you're a startup and if you're a small enterprise or a mom and pop shop, I think you also want to make sure that you're using today, I think, thanks to all the cloud technologies, at a press of a button, you can activate a business, right? And it's becoming more faster and more agile. And that's, I need to make sure that it's fair to both groups, right? If a larger enterprise has got a larger pocket, deep pocket, they have a way of doing things. But at the same time, when you're a startup or a small enterprise, what you need to do as well is equally important. So throughout the process, of course, you need to manage and measure returns. Sometimes digital returns or digitization or digitalization returns cannot be seen immediately. There are aspects that can help you address the immediate business needs, but I think long-term, it's how you see your business evolving with your customer and how you see your internal customers adopting that effectively and translating into the success of the external customers, right? All right, so I thought that should be a short and high impact sharing that I wanted to give in terms of a leap to the future. how do you look at human capital to drive the digital transformation? It's people aspect, but you're also having to understand how it can connect to the business aspect that you're able to run, right? And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. I think that was short and sweet and quite informative. I think it's time now for those who have questions, feel free to ask those questions to Anthony. But those who do not have a question, I would request you to put your mic on mute so that there is no other interruptions.
Hi, thank you, Anthony. Greetings from Sydney. I'm Irfan Malik. Great to hear you. I think it was an excellent spark-off presentation, really looking at what the future outlook is. And in fact, as you really clearly relayed that this is going to be disruptive, but at the same time, it presents a huge opportunity for us. It's better to be preempting and be prepared. Now, what also I want to commend you for giving a broader perspective on the opportunities as well. So where there is disruption and a change in the new wave, and where things are going to become obsolete, it just presents a great opportunity as well. And especially sitting here in Australia as well, where there's a lot of focus on all these digital transformation and emerging tech and Industry 4.0. I think this whatever you've shared is relevant, and it's globally relevant as well. So I also key takeaways for me is that it also presents opportunities for us to collaborate, especially with the global dynamics in play post-COVID landscape. I think there is a lot for us to collaborate. So I really commend you on that. One thing which I want to probe, again, I have my own perspective. I live and breathe in the startup innovation world. What I've seen is that, and I kind of help validate a lot of startups. Every startup wants to do something because of they want to build a valuation and also look compelling in front of the investors, that they want to have an AI element, they want to have a blockchain element. Of course, cybersecurity is implied because they're building a digital solution. So are you seeing that trend that everyone, any startup, whatever, even if it's an app for yoga or meditation, they want to build an AI engine where you can preempt what's the trait of a user, and they want to preempt and offer some AI ML based recommendation engine and things like that. Are you seeing a trend that people are also jumping the gun a little bit more, wanting to, yes, I want to have an AI element to my web digital solution? I mean, this data-based predictive analytics have been always there. So they're kind of using that and putting a wrapper of AI, and just for the sake of looking that they are prepared, there's an element of that happening. I mean, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Irfan, and I hope everything's okay down under. So, so I guess there is the startup communities that I'm speaking to. I had an opportunity, interestingly, 2019 and 2020 as well, both. And 2020 was, I think, I didn't have too much of a time for that. So it was in the first quarter, and after that, everything stopped. So I was in Barcelona, and I was in MIT, Boston as well, the prior year. So all of this was about understanding the startup community and what they are doing, right, in each one of them. And of course, everyone wants to be the next Mark, and they are ambitious, and they want to make sure that they are having cutting edge technologies, and they want to embrace that. And as I'm sure in your experience, as you do the due diligence and so on, you would notice that spirit of enterprise and ambition is something we want. It fuels a lot of initiatives. Whether any of the usage of any of these technologies can fit in, I think it's a matter of making sure that there is a business need that they have identified, which is sustainable, right? And how do you help partner or integrate this new technologies? I've noticed some of them have done their roadmap, and they've planned it through, and they made sure that they have started off effectively with the business need and the business problem being resolved at the first priority, and then of course, bootstrapped all the way and bootstrapped. And the idea is to make sure that they're able to move with that next level strategically when they get into the next round of funding and so on, right? And they are able to invest roadmap 2 and 3. So the reason why I said the human aspect, the ambition helps them see that perspective, but it shouldn't overshadow, or the ego shouldn't come in and start pushing through certain things which they're not ready yet for. And that's when they begin to forget the objective of having started off to help resolve or disrupt something, right? They wanted to disrupt a business or an industry to get their product up and running, which will then facilitate the business community and the people. So I've noticed that those who have kept in sight, line of sight for these aspects, and then use the technology that can help drive them, have survived. And of course, you know very well what happens to the rest.
Yeah.
And a string of failures have been seen for those who have not have lost sight of that business focus. So those are my experience that I've seen day in and day out. I'm speaking to startup community. I'm part of the Tech Association of Malaysia and also around the region. And I noticed that this is continuously a feedback that we see, that we continue to harness with the entrepreneurs and startup founders or promoter-led companies in general.
I think well said. I think if I were to summarize the key takeaway, it's great to have an aspirational element that it is part of your roadmap consideration as you scale or evolve your solution, but it shouldn't be driving your end user solution. It has to be human centered. It has to be ultimately the end user's requirement if it's fit for purpose. And if AI and ML is going to add more value down the line, then definitely worthwhile considering. So well said. Thank you for that. And I look forward to collaborating with you all and the WMC Malaysia team as well. I do see Johnny Chad, our global chairman, and also AS Joe's uncle and Rajiv Nair, Gopa Burma, all the team as well. Greetings to you all, and great to see that you are all able to join and bless us all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Anthony. This is Santosh here.
Hi, Santosh.
It was a fantastic presentation. Thanks for that. Actually, to add what Mr. Irfan has mentioned, of course, you have in your presentation, you have covered about 10 areas where there is a potential threat. Not potential, there will be a threat for that for sure. Only the question is how much percentage, that's the question, and how long it will take. And especially for the last 1 year, because of the COVID has helped the digital transformation in a big way, especially the where I work, which is fintech and as well as global payments, cross-border payments, where we have seen a lot of shift from conventional way of money transfer from a digital shift. But having said that, now this is something elaborated and everybody is looking, and today we have about 40 members and probably are they're from all these 10 areas. And if you can come up, if you can have any case studies for the last 1 year, a small case study where it is helped the industry to retain their business or at least impacted on the bottom line. A small story if you have, that will be good.
Okay, well, I have a few. I'll probably try to share with you one. Okay, so this is a particularly an enterprise which was traditionally offering microcredit services, right? So microcredit as in able to reach small amounts of restricted funding and more so towards cash basis, right? And one of the things that the pandemic did was they could not meet people, right? And I'm sure you would have heard similar structures. So what they did was they obtained a special approval for identity validation. Quite interesting because they had the fintech license. What they did not have is, of course, a licensing authority to be able to validate the final last mile connectivity for the cash component. So what they did was they worked with the postal service connects, which probably have far-reaching connections with individuals, and found a way to make sure that they're able to activate the validation of the individual. Because the fear was that if you approve and transact, some people are not able to reach that particular final output to them, right? And this identity authentication, coupled up with the credential that micro credit facility that they had, allow them to reach people at the most difficult time right now during the pandemic. And this is actually a case in point, and it's a South African-based group which they did it. And of course, they were co-funded and supported by the United Nations as well. And so the identity assessment, because you don't know whether the support is being reached, especially when government is allowing a non-taxed support. And in fact, they were willing to even do matching grants. The idea of making sure that that very urgently needed money reaches the right person to survive through the last part. In a difficult time where people would have just said, come to the branch, go to the place. I mean, this would have cost a lot of difficulty, right? And that small quantum of money reaching them at the right time made a big difference for that small business, small farmer, small, group of people that has been activated. And of course, the reason why I took the fintech example is because it's a lot of organizations which has got the bank license, digital banking or payment transactions or wallets and so on, and how they utilize some of those to effectively help their current process and transaction is going to be changing. And a lot less cash transactions today, I think almost none. People don't walk into branches anymore. How the branches can go, how the people from the branches or the entities can go and meet them is where was the validation required. So now with the personal identification platform and technology, they could open an account from wherever they were, right? Showing their identity photo and capturing that information and being able to progressively authenticate that microcredit and then collect the money at an authorized center or in the account. And if they were bankrupt, it's even more worse. So they had no choice but to collect it through an authorized agent or a bank partner that they have. So, of course, all of this process was automated and helped the step. And I'm hoping that this gives you a perspective of something that reaches the individual, how it supports the social impact.
Thank you. I think I can very well relate it to my industry as well as my company, because we have seen something similar in this case.
Yeah. So imagine if I cannot see a branch person, I cannot see a bank, but I need the money. I have to show my credentials, my identity. So I do it through a phone. I open an account, I set up everything, and then I get it done. And then the money comes to me. So in a difficult time, that makes a big difference, especially when you are in complete lockdown, right? You can't go anywhere. But you need, without resource, you cannot move forward, right? So again, a fintech looking at that social side.
But also, many of the countries, the authorities are, providing some X amount fund for the such. Now, for example, Singapore is a classic example where they do a lot of funding up to a certain level for such a transformation. And probably if you can collate and circulate with people, and these are other countries, these are opportunities. Probably that will be good for them.
Absolutely. In fact, Santosh, great you brought that point. Every country in the world that I've known now have got a provision to facilitate digital transformation for small and medium enterprise. If I'm not talking about the rest, right? If I are a micro organization, a micro SME or an SME, there is a provision for you to, they call it the digitalization fund and support, right? And if you're able to demonstrate that you have a proper business case, I think they simplified it. and
Right.
it's going to help you. In fact, the word I chose to use was matching grant. It's not like a giveaway. So the matching grant is I have to put some, and then they're able to do it. But when you can't, of course, they're able to put that funding to support. Malaysia also has that. In fact, for small and medium enterprise to set up the point of sale system, to set up a digital platform, everything is there, including payment gateway and e-wallet support as well. So that's just one example. And likewise, I'm sure in emerging economies, all of APAC, I think the activities are very highly progressive right now. And I think they will continue to be through the next year as well.
Oh, great, thank you. Because we are planning something on the space and digital space in July, especially startups. Probably such information helps, for the startup guys, because they don't have to do the funding from day one. Probably all this initiative can help.
They have a new feature for the angels.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for that presentation. That was really interesting and very intriguing. But I just want to pick out a couple of points from your presentation that intrigues me as well. And I'm sure it will for all those who have younger people in their lives when they seek jobs. In your presentation, you actually mentioned that 5G is coming in, and that will have a major impact on the way the global environment for jobs. And there are many ways that businesses are looking at whether it's disruptive or whether they want to do it for returns. There are several objectives businesses have. But my question here is that the fact is that the population rates are expanding exponentially. How does this impact digitalization when they're working in a digital world and the availability of jobs? What kind of things should someone who's looking for, a long-term career, long-term, not rather, a short, 2 years, 3 years kind of things, which is what's happening in most jobs right now. What kind of skill sets should they be looking for? Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas, for that. And of course, there's two sets of skills that I'm looking into. I think number one is, of course, is the digital skills, right? and the digital skills are essential because it's going to make sure that you are positioning yourself for the digital demands that's coming in from employers, right? And I'm assuming that this question is related to employability, right? Working in a company, right? So, and that digital skills, of course, it's a whole world out there. But the key areas, the 5 areas that I foresee in the next 10 years to easily 20 years is, of course, related to data, related to data science, related to cybersecurity, right? And these two will play a very pivotal point, data science and cybersecurity. And the reason why I'm saying it, because both are kind of interrelated, right? Interrelated in some ways, but one protects the other, and one coexists with the other. And so with one of that, you're still okay. With both of it, together, you are very stable, right? The demand is going to be high. Now, the next aspect is the functional aspect. We talked about the digital side. The second is the functional side. The functional skills, of course, we generally talk about is operations, human resource, finance, marketing, sales, etc., supply chain, quality, standard, everything, all of that would be there. It's going to be imperative that you master one of these, right? You can't master cybersecurity or data science. You can add it as a digital skill, but the functional skill you have to master because that becomes your domain that you can strengthen. So in the past, they used to say, jack of all, master of none, right? So I will revise it for you, Thomas, and say, jack of all, master of one, right? So the reason why I say that is because once you are certain in your domain, it can be anything, human resources, marketing, sales, etc. So all of these are going to couple up together with the digital skills that's going to happen. Now, the third one skill that I'm going to tell you. Now, usually people are born with it or not. That's what they say. But being a HR person and a tech person, I realized one thing. The first half of my life, I was in tech. The second half of my life, I became the human resource side. So I realized that you need that foundation, but you need to have the social skills. If you have digital skills and if you have the functional skills, and if you do not have the social skills, you are left without anything. You're lost. And the social skills here is about emotional quotient and the social interactive ability. You need to be able to articulate and share that. So I will look at these three as the three pivotal points for the skills that every individual needs to have in order to sustain their career. And interestingly, it can be applicable to their businesses as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's very straightforward and easy to understand, something that we can actually transmit to our younger generation. Very good.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Verghese, based in
Hi, Verghese.
Malaysia. Hi. You see, I'm in the electronic security industry, and there's two parts to it in what you've said. One is the bad guys. The bad guys have started realizing, why do I have to break into a house, get chased by a dog, bitten by a dog? They've embarked on digital theft. Cybersecurity is a big part of it.
Cybercrime.
Now, cybercrime, exactly. And now the electronic security side of it, it's now all AI-powered video analytics, sound analytics. So what's happening is, I know one of the major telcos in Malaysia, they've reduced their security guards from about 500 down to about 80, and now they're targeting about 20. They are digitalizing the whole process. And the biggest advantage is there's no recurring cost unless you are going into cloud. It's more of a CapEx. So that's the right direction. And they're all embarking on this. Malaysia is struggling to embark on IR 4.0. And you're already talking on 5.0. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Verghese, for that commentary. And I think you might have overheard me say in a very low tone, while we are talking about where we are in Industry 4.0 and moving to 5.0, I said some countries are at 2.5. I think I didn't want to officially announce where it is. I think you got the point. So coming to the point on cybercrimes, I think it's very treacherous, very stealth. They are of the best brains in the world who are deploying this technology, and they are targeting corporate enterprises. And I think recently you would have heard that healthcare institutions have been of target worldwide. And I think our neighboring country got hit. And likewise, I think in the case of Malaysia, telcos got hit, banks got hit, but healthcare institutions are getting hit around the world now. And they're using breach of security as a way to enter. And using the same technologies which we protect, they're using the same technologies to cause the breach and penetrate. And I recently had an opportunity to speak about cyber security and crimes that's happening. And I think the future list of crimes, like what you exactly pointed out, people are not going into houses or buildings, but they're going through technology. So the breach of a device which has left to be without proper tool of protection is sufficient for them to penetrate. Like if a house does not have a light or an alarm, the same way if you relate it back to an opportunity for a breach or activity that's happening, for them to penetrate inside through and I think the security camera devices are now being used very actively as well. So anyway, I think you gave a great example. I think beautiful way to say that companies are becoming more effective in terms of using security personnel and security technologies. And there are companies in Malaysia which is already deploying robots, the bots as well, that's coming into supporting this.
Thanks, Anthony. Is there anyone else who would have any questions?
Yep.
Hello.
Hi. May I?
Hello, can I? Am I audible?
Yes,
Hi.
yes.
Dr. Anthony, Mr. Anthony. It was wonderful, rather, hearing you about this leap forward. And I was also expecting such leap forwards. But what happened to India? Because from the World Malayali Council, when we talk, really, I was really trying to do my best in certain spheres. And now, after the unleash of that tiger and then the big leap forward and things like that, are we not, instead of making that giant leap forward, are we stepping back? And why? And what digital technology promises? What I'm saying, can there be a little more transparency through this digital technology? Will it emerge? In fact, I thought that that is where things will emerge also, where all this transformation is absolutely going only to a few pockets, creating only a few more billionaires. And everybody else seems to be losers, especially in India, whatever be the reason. So what is this digital transformation in store for something for India to emerge further? Because we have got a huge people who are practically illiterate when it comes to even other ways, and digital also, they are illiterate. And when all these things, even Bangladesh has taken ahead of our number when it comes to the GDP. So what do we really look at when we think, I'm in India, leaving everything. I could have been USA in a big way, long time ago, but I somewhat thought, no, India is definitely going to emerge, that some leap forward is going to happen. But today I'm a little sad, man, and I'm just wondering, okay, what can we do still? That is, in this digital transformation, how at least some more digital transparency can come. And that is perhaps the only way the India can move. So digital transformation and the leap forward with some more transparency through whatever intelligence or anything, is it likely to happen? When Niragani went to the rather with the cabinet rank, with the transformation and all, that is what I expected. Oh, this is going to be a big transparent place, and all this digital forward with this incredible India, we'll be leaping forward. So under the circumstances, what this digital technology holds for India, and I thought it is something related to the transparency, which should be really able to control the bureaucracy. I still believe more than anything, not even the politicians, it is the bureaucracy of India which destroyed us. Even now, politicians, yes, they may be rather making money. That is a thing because they need to campaign for the election or whatever it is. But more than that, can this effective control on bureaucracy and really effective control on the transparency aspects, can it be coming through this digital transformation? Without that, otherwise we'll be again going down the ladder with no leap forward. When we talk about myself as an Indian, what's your response?
Thank you.
Hi, this is Gopa here. ജോസാറ് പറഞ്ഞതിനോട് കൂടെ എന്റെ ചോദ്യം കൂടെ ചോദിക്കാം, അപ്പൊ പിന്നെ എളുപ്പമുണ്ടോ രണ്ടിനും കൂടെ ഒരു വെടിക്ക് ഉത്തരം പറയാം.
Sorry, whoever raised that question, Anthony would not understand Malayalam, so you might want to say that in English.
All right, Anthony. Just the speaker was talking to you. He was our key functionary in World Malayali Council in India. A very well-respected person to all of us. So he was asking about where digital technology is for India.
Okay,
I hope you understood it.
Understood. Thank you.
My question was, as Mr. Jose was saying, where do we really stand in digital technology? Is the government fooling us? We were under the impression that 5 years back we are going to be somewhere in the world and all that. So have we progressed a little bit, or where do we really stand? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give it a shot, and from a general perspective, right? I'm not referring to any country or anything like that. I think Luis, Joe understands why we need to be able to respond effectively to this. But I think it's a very valid question. I think Mr. Jose has brought up transparency. There's an aspect of privacy that comes along with transparency. Then there is a second element in terms of digitization. He talked about economics. I think he said, why is it only going to some pockets? Can it be becoming a more shared economy? Second aspect. And I think third is about how do we see economic, progress for the society as well, right? So I'm going to just give a perspective around it. Hopefully it helps. The first one is there is no limit to transparency due to the digital transformation side, which means everybody can know everything that is happening at any time, thanks to technology today, right? So today you don't need to wait for somebody to tell you. In fact, if it is happening live, you'll be able to see it, be able to record and show it to us. And there is so many proper positive advantage that can be held from a social aspect, from an economic aspect, and a progress aspect. Technology can allow us to make sure that we are able to transparently build it. And one particular example is I've been always talking about education or democratization of education for everyone. And you can only do that via digital technology, which means every single person in India, for example, is probably having a mobile phone. Now, whether they have a smartphone or not, again, it's challengeable point of view. And likewise, to anyone, you can transmit learning and knowledge, right? So I'm just coming from that general angle. And along with it, I'm also suggesting that if it is related to education, internet must be free. And that can be possible through digital or digitization, right? The digital transformation can help empower everybody to have access to knowledge, access to learning, right? So that way we can raise the entire society and move forward. Now, the other side is transparency. Now, transparency for justice, transparency for society, transparency from that angle, I think is automatically being enhanced when you do this, right? And the idea is to make sure that the right parties are keeping it transparent, be it the media, be it the politics, or be it anybody else, industry. I think the idea is to make sure that they're keeping it transparent and saying it as it is, as honest as they can, right? So that's the first aspect. The second one is economics. It's a capitalistic society and world, generally I'm referring to. And so those who are having an idea and that they're able to make it happen, they protect the idea. And then, of course, it goes to those owners of those ideas or the shareholders of those ideas that the maximum returns get to, right? And the idea is to make sure that we are able to look at a shared economy. And the digital or digitization is a better platform to make it a more shared economy as compared to the previous economy, right? So these are the two aspects I just wanted to give a perspective. And I'm also looking at what is happening around the world so that can be something that can be utilized in these two aspects.
Thanks, Anthony. Is there any more questions from the participants?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Mr. Anthony. Extremely informative. I think probably technologically less literate person like me, I think it was an extremely useful session. I work with a food ingredient company called as Kerry. So I've seen in our organization, we adopt the market intelligence, the market insights rather. So we have in fact gone in for an IBM AI-based platform to try and gather information about what the consumers are talking on a real-time basis. What are the needs and all that. So we've seen that over the last 1 to 2 years time, our understanding of the customer has significantly gone up. Rather than having boots on the ground and trying to gather data from the market and then react, that's going to take a long time. So by having a market intelligence on a real-time basis, our speed to react to the market requirements has significantly enhanced. So I've really seen the power of technology really in use. Now that's on the marketing front in terms of having an understanding of the consumers. Now, my question to you is in terms of, we are in fact one of the largest manufacturers of food ingredients in the world. So I would like to understand from a manufacturing standpoint, we face a lot of challenges in terms of supply chain. We are not able to turn around products as fast as what the consumers would expect us to do. From a manufacturing standpoint, where do you see technology really transforming manufacturing, supply chain, and all that? Can you please share some thoughts on this?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And of course, the examples I gave were more from a supply chain perspective, from an office or environment perspective, or from a knowledge perspective, right? So for each industry, there is evolution which is taking place. And I think manufacturing, I will highlight two particular areas. One is IoT, Internet of Things, right? I'm sure you're familiar with it. The second one is automation or industrial automation, right? And the reason why I say that is because if I think Kerry is, of course, a significant and a famous food ingredients manufacturing group. So if you're looking at making sure that your supply chain of certain ingredients that needs to come in from those, I've noticed that companies who are evolving in this area are also expecting their suppliers to adopt digitization. So that way, you are, of course, not just the just-in-time side, but you are actually making sure that the supply chain is functioning like a well-oiled engine, right? It's not disrupted anywhere. You have a proper requirement gathering, a proper supplier gathering, a proper risk mitigation and inventory management, and all of that is the full works of it. Now, and the way I see IoT and industrial automation coming in, industrial automation is probably first, making sure that your supply chain is also adopting that, and your delivery chain is also adopting that, and your quality chain is also manufacturing and it's monitoring that. Now, coming into IoT, I think IoT is about within the manufacturing facility. What are those things that you can have, help automate and ensure that there is less of human errors, of course, and of course, you're talking about pilferage and other impacts that's coming around that aspect, and how do you manage that aspect as well?
Yeah.
Right. Now, between these two, I'm sure Kerry is already probably investigating what's the best way to consider. Data is going to be important, right?
Sure. Yeah.
What data your B2B customers are looking at, making sure that you're able to supply them on time, and how do you using a big data that can help you connect them with them as well. So hopefully this gives you a perspective. I know it's very bird's eye. I've been to many, I walked the floors of many plants, manufacturing where they have automated and they've used IoT and they used big data. But from those angles, I'm sure this will give you some lead or leeway to consider.
Perfect. Okay, right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Anthony. Again, thanks for the question. All right. Any other questions? Alex, how much time do we have left?
We have another 17 minutes or so. We encourage everyone to ask questions because finding Anthony to give some answers is gold dust. So please make use of this opportunity and get
Alex, you give me too much of credit and too much of pressure, Alex.
Since there is more time left, maybe I can ask a question. Can I go ahead?
Please introduce yourself and
yeah, my name is Krishnan. I work with a pharmaceutical company from Bangkok. Hi. With our office in Bangkok, we have operations in around 30 countries. Malaysia is also one of the big markets for us. We took over BioLife, a company there. To quote that example, even BioLife, we have some 70 to 100 health coaches today in Malaysia. They were all standing in all booths and vaccines and all those stuff. Looking at this, one of the slides that you shared, it shows around 40-50% of AI taking over health coaches. Can you share a bit more on that and how the trend is looking like and what organizations are aiming at? That will be really good.
Yeah. So the idea of giving you a perspective of what health industry is taking place and advisory service. If you notice recently, especially in the last 12 months, a lot of gym apps, life coach apps, coaching apps have come into play. So I'm not saying it's going to replace, but it's going to disrupt the industry that is giving health support, rather than the actual medical side, the medical doctor side. But those who are advising prior to that or any stages before that are probably going to be more on a digital side, right? So if you are in that industry right now, Krishna, you're talking about you yourself developing an app. I'm not saying it's almost like cannibalizing, right? But you have to disrupt your business by starting that journey, right? And being able to adopt that means you're able to position and in time to come, probably manage that space where digital firms are coming in, offering the same service, right? And where you cannot travel right now, you cannot have foot on the ground, you're going to use this technology to allow you to make sure that you're virtually foot on the ground, right? So you're capturing the virtual space to be able to make sure that you're able to provide them that advice. And I know I'm giving you a macro perspective from a strategy perspective, but in the long run, this is probably in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, these kind of activities where roles will be replaced, right? Of course, as a result, jobs are going to be impacted. However, with companies that are able to make sure that you're adopting in the interest of the future sustainability of the company, even if it means to cannibalize some of your line of business, it's going to ensure that you have a solid throughput after that.
Thank you. I think like the example you gave for fintech, it's more straightforward. But when it comes to health, there is a lot of complexities that we see today. I mean, like what you said, we have been also working on developing apps and trying to see to what extent we can, automate some part of the solutions and recommendations. But,
the biggest challenge for health and med devices would be regulatory.
Yeah, regulatory is one of the major aspects. But then, the complexity also remains much, much higher than a fintech, maybe. I'm not sure. There are ways to maybe look at very, very niche areas and work on that rather than going on a...
Krishna, I'll say to each one's own, right? So basically to the fintech industry, they're going through a set of problems. To the healthcare industry, health tech, they are going through then the ed tech is going through a set. So each one of them, ed tech or health tech or fintech, each one of them are going through a set of challenge. It's like the growing challenges everyone is having at different stages. It's just that making sure that you're able to make cutting edge decisions or technology that can change and see the world. It's about innovation. And if you're able to adopt that innovation in that organization and able to sustain that, and I think that will be the way forward as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Anil.
I have a question. Hello, can you speak?
Please introduce yourself. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi Anthony. It was actually a very nice section for me, like beginners for experience. It's actually a very good information that you have shared. I am Vaishnavi and I am working as a senior business development manager at Actium Technologies. Basically, we concentrate on telecom industries. So far I have seen like how the AI is useful in BFSI and how it is useful for companies like Amazon. But could you also give some suggestions like how can we adopt AI into the telecom industry and how can AI makes telecom industry's life better?
Okay. Thanks, Vaishnavi, for the question. I think telco is also one of the early adopters of AI. And they have applied, of course, two voice bots and chat bots. As part of the first line customer interaction, frontline customer activity that individuals are having, especially in the aspect of from a sales perspective and a service perspective, right? So telcos have started to utilize what's called RPA, robotic process automation.
Yes.
And two particular areas is the voice side and the chat side. And of course, there's newer areas being considered. I think earlier I spoke about Cognito as well for emotional evaluation of the customer engagement side, CX as well.
Yeah.
So these three aspects, I would say, Vaishnavi, are something that most telcos, mature telcos, are already utilizing right now. And I think that will be an angle for you to, if you're not already considered or being part of it, I think it's going to be imperative to consider. And it will definitely, of course, create more efficiency in the business that you're looking at.
Okay. Okay. But then, as you rightly said, most of the telcos, like mature telcos, have adopted it. Is that the reason that not all the telcos are adapting? Is because of the cost that they could incur, or because of any other reason?
Yeah, I think cost is an important factor. You can't run away from that. I think I like to look at it as an investment, right? So if you have the perspective of investment and then returns, and you are on par, or at least you can compete with the similar telco operators to sustain your business. The downside is if you do not, then they're going to move, right?
Okay.
You're going to lose customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's about that investment choice is there, but definitely the aversive or barriers to enter into the automation for telcos would be cost and in-house capability as well. So these would be the things that we need to look into.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else with any very interesting questions, Anthony?
Yeah, very interesting question. So I have one thing to add for what Vaishnavi asked as a sequel to that. She mentioned a lot about telcos. So most of these telcos, the mature telcos, are adapting. But my question is digital transformation to be considered as a capital expenditure or an operational expenditure? Because that's where the challenge is, and I think that's where they're stuck between the heaven and hell, and they don't know what which way to go. And most of these telcos across the globe, whether they're small or big, they're asking that question themselves and not taking that route, because not everybody's on digital. They're not selling on-demand services and stuff. So do you have anything to add to that, Anthony?
Yeah, definitely. I think you have brought Alex, a fantastic point there. I think there's always an OPEX and a CAPEX war. And with digitization, I think it's more of the big shift taking place especially for telcos. CAPEX is a killer. And to get a concession or one of those long-term investments and then returns over a long-term period is going to suffer their shareholders. So more and more are open to look into more OPEX-based approach. And I think any investment right now, they're making a decision, especially during pandemic, is going to be OPEX-based rather than CAPEX, because they want to save cash right now. And those providers of technology or solutions who are moving towards the cloud and providing the support based on OPEX are going to survive through this challenge. Now, having said that, if the government decides that they can only afford to provide certain segments of the licenses or bandwidth or whatever it is, and it requires a significant investment on CAPEX, that's, of course, you can't avoid it. There's no choice. So they have to pay, and I think that's going to be a significant investment for them. But however, for them to do the operational and ongoing and sustainable customer relationships that they need to maintain, as you know, it's a very competitive one. I put telco and financial institution at the same level. They have to fight for their customers. I think Joe also nodding his head, because if you're a bank, you need to survive. Every dollar, every customer counts. Every phone call counts. Yeah, and likewise, every telco is the same. So every dollar you save is probably 1,000 times saved, in the long run for them. Yeah. Every customer you retain.
Yeah,
right.
Agreed. Yeah. Thanks, Anthony, for that clarification.
All right. So I guess we could just take one more question, Alex.
Okay, Santosh again. Sorry, the one last question. See, today, because it's a very interesting topic, we have about 280 million, migrant population globally. And of that, I would say 80-20, it's 80% of the blue collars. And the blue collar mindset is still, on cash. They are, dealing with cash. They are least preferred to a digital space when it comes to, the money, because it's a very sentiment. And this community year after year, having the same, mindset, because that's how, they have been brought and with various, lot of interest in their respective countries, especially the politicians play a big role in that aspect, and they remains there, and they, continue to migrate, and they continue to have the same sort of behavior. How to shift, to a digital, arena when it comes to all the, transactions, or of course, I have seen a big shift in India. I was there last, in early this year. I've seen many people have started using Google Pay. Some have mentioned is, digital things are not happening in India, but I was amazed with the number of people are, using. Everywhere I go, they ask Google Pay, and unfortunately, I don't have a Google Pay because with my Malaysian number, I can't access the Google Pay in India. So I always bank upon my wife to please make the payment. So I literally, it has made a lot of shift in India. And even if you see the number of accounts open in the last 5-6 years are humongous, probably in the tune of about 300-400 million people have opened accounts in India. So how this shift can happen if the happening in India, which I'm not seen in other part of the world where I travel, especially with the migrant community. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Okay, so it's quite interesting you asked me this question, because there's two organizations I recently had an opportunity to speak and engage with. One is World Bank. The other one is ILO. So one was about critical occupation skills. Right? They call it the COS. And the other one, ILO, is about migrant workers. Of course, when you talk about migrant workers, it's about safety first. Okay, and of course, the next is in terms of making sure that there's security. Safety, security in the terms of financials, and So more and more organizations and government are now coming into looking at, and I'll particularly answer the migrant workers, and probably this can be considered for a group of people that you're thinking about, are using smart digital options in terms of payment or salaries coming into accounts, which has got accounts in home country. So safety and security are managed in a very interesting way, that the migrant worker, like you said, Google Pay is one of them, of course. And there are many other systems that is coming into play in every country, wherever they are licensed. And where they have a home country account, it goes directly into that account on the same day, or if not the following day, right? And a portion has been allocated for them, for their country expenses, and a home country salary which goes in. So I'm not sure whether we are heading in the right direction, but some of the thoughts around that was to make sure that there is a safe haven for the individual, because they may be threatened or compelled, or other issues, they may lose the money, or the transactions are there. They like to see cash. Cash is king for them. But I think they are adopting the idea of making sure it's safe in their phone, or safe in an account, or safe in a card, or a digital card, or a phone card, right? It's sitting there. Then only they can operate that. It's becoming more like an ATM in the phone for them. So that technology, I think, connects back to one example I spoke a bit earlier about the fintech, which has got the authentic identifying the last mile connect with that individual who's the recipient of the fund or the money, and also making sure that the process from start to end is very transparent. Because I think they are fearful that if money doesn't reach the person, the fear of not holding cash in the hand becomes a problem. So migrant workers, of course, now I'm talking about foreign workers, the migrant workers who have lived in another country. And I think referring back to Malaysia, where we have almost about 2 to 3 million workers, laborers that it's coming from different parts of the world. And vice versa in other countries like Singapore and many others as well. Now within countries, of course, there are different challenges, but the idea of security and safety is pivotal for both the reference points I said about the ILO as well as International Labour Organization and the World Bank side. I hope I'm answering your question, but the digital aspect is becoming more acceptable because they can see everything happening in their own language in their phone, which belongs to them.
Thank you. It's more of a, unless you push, it's very difficult to penetrate those sectors. Yeah.
It is. When the employer decides that this is the way,
yeah,
then it becomes helpful.
All right.
Thank you, Santosh, for your question. So now we have come to the end of the Q&A session, and I would like to invite Mr. Verghese to share a note of thanks. Verghese.
Verghese, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Anthony writes, it was a fantastic presentation. You made it very simple. You gave a lot of statistics. You actually embarked on something of the future where we are struggling to talk of the present. But I feel that the future is here, mainly because the digitalization platform has fast-tracked due to COVID. We have seen massive move towards automation in various sectors, like what you have rightly said, the industrial, the telcos. And soon the other segment will have to follow suit. It's a matter of time and how fast they can adapt. And again, you embarked on big data and artificial intelligence. The internet penetration has increased rapidly, which means a lot of data. So how are we going to collate all this? So it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, data mining is all helping to convert these data to business intelligence. I think it was a fantastic presentation. I'm sure all of our members and the participants would agree. Once again, Anthony Raj, thank you very much for the beautiful human capital to drive transformation. And I'd also like to thank WMC Global, WMC Malaysian Province, the office bearers, and all who has participated. Special thanks to Joe and Alex. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Verghese. And yes, a big, huge thank you, Anthony. You might get people calling you to probably deal with whatever they need to. Thank you again, great one. Before all of you go, one last announcement. As part of WMC Malaysia region's CSR activity, tomorrow we are having a recruitment drive for those people, those young people who are out of job. We've got some really good response from the public, and we are hoping that as WMC can actually start this and lead the way to help people during these tough times. We are, hoping all your blessings for all of us to make this a success. Once again, thank you very much, everyone. Good night. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.